Hello everybody and welcome to the third video in the OpenSim setup series. This is CJ Blink120 and today we're going to be working with terrain, and as you see we're going to be creating some more advanced terrain for our OpenSim region using some advanced editing software which is free as it turns out, which is nice. So yeah, let's get started. First thing that we're going to do is going to be go and download the 3D terrain editing software, which is going to be called L3DT. So if we say L3DT at Google, we go and we get the standard edition. As you can see, you've got version 11.11 updated as of the 30th of November. This is the most stable edition of L3DT. We don't really need the developer's build right now. If we just go ahead and download L3DT, you can save the installer, run it. I've already done that. The program, it kind of looks like this, but when you get it, first thing that you'll probably see is going to be this. You can select to do a designable map. If at the beginning it says would you like to go through the tutorial section, you can if you want. It does do a lot of in-depth tutorial. It's an in-depth tutorial section on a lot of the more advanced features of L3DT. We won't be using all those features in this video, so you can feel free to skip that if you don't want to go all the way through. Right now we're going to do a designable map, and we're going to select the height field size. Now, the height field is kind of a data file that OpenSim can read, and for each square meter of a region, it's going to store a height value. And that height value will tell OpenSim where exactly the terrain needs to be at any given location, which is cool. Right now we need to set the width and the height to both 256. The horizontal scale should be 1, and so we get a world size of 256 by 256 meters. And just make sure you keep that scale. Next thing we have to do, HF to DM ratio. I find the best value is going to be 16, which gives us enough precision within that small region. So we're going to do next. Now this is an interesting kind of dialogue. This will let you kind of mess around with the average altitude and the range and all the different features that you can have in the terrain. I'm going to keep this at default for right now. I'm just going to go ahead and say next. First thing that we're going to do is look at the design map so we can get an idea of what it's going to look like. We say okay, it's going to calculate design map, and that's really what we get. Okay, so now let's say you were satisfied with this and you wanted to keep going. You could say calculate. Right now we're going to go into edit, and I'll show you the edit tool for this. You can change the size and shape of the brush to whatever you want. I'm just going to do 1 square kind of in diameter, and we're going to look at using the more lakes feature. So let's say we wanted a few more lakes kind of relative to where we are. We can always do this kind of thing, and as we keep going over, it'll change the color, which is kind of cool. And then let's say we wanted some more peaks around those lakes, and then increase that a little bit, and then on kind of either side we can look at this kind of thing, and making sure the peak values are higher along the edge. So maybe I want a little bit wider of a lake, so I'll change my brush size to 2 and go over this kind of again. Do that and take off the peak for right now. Kind of do that kind of thing. And when you're satisfied with it, you just click close and then calculate. Now all we have to do is calculate the height field. OpenSim doesn't do anything with the water attributes or terrain normals map, so really all we need is the height field map. And you can see it's calculating, doing a whole bunch of images, kind of overlay images to kind of figure out what it looks like, and there we go. Okay, so as you can see, you have the darker areas which are below water and the lighter areas which are above water. Now, the thing is with OpenSim, we kind of have a terrain range that we have to stay within because the water level is at 20 meters. So, and that's by default in OpenSim. We can change it if we want, but just to be simple, we want to go by OpenSim's kind of standard. So if we look down here, all the values are negative in the black regions and they're positive in the white regions, and then along the red line they're very close to zero. So what we're going to do is go to Operations, Height Field, Change Vertical Range, and we're going to change the minimum altitude to 0 and the maximum altitude to 60, and that'll give us a nice range of altitude where we can see that. And then now that you go around here, you can see that's kind of the value. And then right around that same line here, you've got values that are kind of around 20, and so that's kind of going to be our water line right there. And then all the values that are kind of above that are going to go all the way up to 60 at the most. So you see that area is very close to 60 when you look at the altitude down here. That area is very close to 60. Okay, then what we're going to do is go ahead and file export. If we like what we see, we're going to export the height field because that's what OpenSim reads. We're going to change the file format to something that OpenSim reads, which is R32. Then we're going to go into the options, and this is very important, that we invert. It says right now that it's going to invert the y-axis, and we want that to be false. So double click on that, change it to false, say OK. We're going to I'm going to call this terrain 01 .r32, and then I'm going to go ahead and browse to the folder. You can go ahead and browse to wherever your OpenSim directory is. Inside the bin folder is where we're going to do that. So I've got it on my media drive. And go to OpenSim, the OpenSim one that you're running right now, bin, and then inside the bin we're just going ahead and drop it right there. So terrain01.r32. We're going to go ahead and save that. That looks okay, so we'll say OK, and that's saved. Now when we go into the console, the OpenSim console, we're going to type in terrain load, and then we're going to give the file name. So terrain01.r32. And then I'm going to hit enter, and it says the terrain is reloaded. So we'll go back into our viewer, and as you can see, our terrain has been reloaded to where we want it to be, which is cool. Now let's say that I see this and I'd say, well, let's see, where would be a good place for a house? Let's say right here. So I decide that here I kind of I want to build a house. So right in that area. Well, if we look, we can zoom out and we can kind of do a top-down view of this region and kind of compare it to what we see in L3DT. And as you can see, it's very similar. So the area where I want to build that house is going to be like right here, and about average altitude of 40 meters. Well, that looks about right. So I'm going to probably average that out to about 35 around there. But how do we do that? Well, the easiest way I've found is to go into the 3D terrain editing. So we click 3D there, and you can see this is the region in 3D. And if we right click, we can kind of right click and hold the area where we want it to be. And we can kind of see, where everything is right here. So what I want to do is go ahead and right here, let's say right here, we're going to go ahead and flatten that terrain out just a little bit. We're going to go into, you might already have this open, height field tools, right? And we're going to go ahead and say I'm going to say set to and then 35 meters. So right here, it kind of shows you where it's going to cut off. That's okay. We're going to say right there. It's a good area. That does look a little bit blocky though. So what we're going to do is use our smooth tool and kind of go around this and smooth it out a little bit. So that gives us a nice flat area to work with. So then we just go ahead and exit out of this, and that gives us that nice flat field here at about 35 meters. You can see this area right around here. If you look at that altitude, it's about 35 meters. So when we go ahead and say export active map, we're going to say R32, invert the Y boolean. We're going to change that to false. Again, we're going to call this terrain 02.r32. Just go ahead and make sure that's in the same directory as it was last time, and it is. So we're going to go ahead and drop it in there, say save, and OK. Then again, when we go into our console, we're going to type in terrain R30 or terrain load terrain 02.r32, enter, and that loads the terrain. Now when we go back into our viewer, we can see that we've smoothed it out enough right around here to be able to create a house, which is nice. So that's the basics of using L3DT. Again, there are a lot of features in that program, so feel free to experiment with it as much as you like. And that's just about it for this tutorial. Don't forget to subscribe. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comments of this video, or you can message me. I try to look at all the messages that I get and answer all of them. If you do have any requests for future videos, either leave those in the comments or message me about those. In the future, I think in a couple more videos, we're going to be setting up a grid system, so you and your friends who are running servers on separate computers can kind of link them all together and be able to access all of those from remote locations. So that'll be something to look forward to in future videos. So this is CJ Blink 120, and have a good day.